My in-laws demanded a DNA test to prove my 8-year-old daughter was really family. They said it in front of her. "We need to be sure she belongs with us," my mother-in-law added. I didn't shout. I just said, "Understood." 3 days later, their lawyer called and they went pale. I used to think Christmas disasters only happened in movies. Then I married into this family. We walked into my in-laws' dining room, me, my husband, and our daughter Fiona, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. Not cinnamon, not pine, just tension, thick enough to slice and serve with gravy. My mother-in-law was already seated at the head of the table, smiling in that tight, Botox-adjacent way she gets when she's about to ruin someone's holiday. My father-in-law hovered beside her, slicing the ham like it personally betrayed him. And there was Agnes, my husband's grandmother, smiling at Fiona with real warmth. The only person in that house who didn't treat my child like a visiting exchange student they didn't sign up for. My husband Samuel barely got his coat off before he was summoned to the kitchen. "Can you help with the rolls?" Translation: Hannah doesn't deserve backup at critical moments. So it was just me, Fiona, and the firing squad. I sat down, trying to pretend my spine wasn't stiff enough to snap. Fiona slid into the chair next to me, legs swinging, eyes bright. She was 8, still hoping Christmas magic could overpower family dysfunction. I admired her optimism. "Oh, Hannah," my mother-in-law, Janice, trilled. "Did you bring the dessert? I worried you might forget." Translation: You're incompetent, but I'll hide it behind concern because it's Christmas. Strike 1. Gerald, my father-in-law, muttered, "She tries her best," under his breath. I wasn't even sure he meant for me to hear it. Strike 2. Across the table, my sister-in-law's daughter, Madeline, same age as Fiona, twirled in her sparkly dress like she was starring in a commercial for Holiday Princess of the Year. Fiona watched her quietly, hands folded. She never needed spotlights, just kindness. Then, right on schedule, the universe proved it had a dark sense of humor. My husband stepped out of the kitchen doorway again, momentarily out of sight. Perfect opening for cruelty. Gerald cleared his throat, straightened in his chair, and said, "We need a DNA test." Just like that. Like he was announcing the potatoes were overdone. Fiona froze. The whole room did. "We just want to be sure she's really family," he added, eyes locked onto my child. Janice leaned forward, smiling sweetly, if snakes wore pearls. "We need to be sure she belongs with us." Fiona's breath hitched. Her shoulders folded inward. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just shrank. And that was somehow worse. Inside, I burned hot enough to melt the Christmas candles. Outside, I was ice. I looked at my daughter, my baby, trying to make herself small enough to disappear, and something inside me clicked into place. Not rage, not shock. Something colder, sharper, final. So I looked at them and said, "Understood." Silence detonated across the table. That was the moment something shifted. In me. In them. In the whole room. Janice blinked, annoyed I hadn't given her the meltdown she'd been salivating for. Right then, my husband stepped back into the room. "What did I miss?" Gerald jumped in instantly. "Your wife is being dramatic," Janice added. "We just want to confirm she's actually yours." Fiona flinched. My husband's face went still. Scary, still. "What did you just say?" His voice was low enough to rattle bones. My sister-in-law Kimberly shrugged from across the table. "Don't act like you've never wondered." He stared at them like he was seeing strangers. Dangerous, delusional strangers. "We're leaving," he said. "Now." Janice clicked her tongue. "Oh, don't be ridiculous." "You don't talk about my daughter like that," he snapped. "I don't care whose house this is." Gerald lifted his chin. We're just being honest. You don't even know if she's really yours. We deserve clarity. Your wife has given us reasons to question things before." The room went dead still. That was the line. The real campaign. Months, years of little digs wrapped into one final stab. I stood. "Fiona, get your coat." She did, silently. My brave little girl holding back tears she didn't understand yet. As we walked out, Agnes, sweet, sharp, 90-year-old Agnes, pressed her hand to her mouth. She looked ashamed to share blood with the people at that table. Outside, the night was cold, but it felt cleaner than the air inside their house. My husband buckled Fiona into the car. She sat there staring at her mittens, small and quiet and hurting. "Mom," she whispered, "did I do something wrong?" I swear my heart cracked in half. "No," I said. "Not one thing." She nodded slowly, but she didn't believe me yet. Not after hearing her own grandparents question whether she belonged. I climbed into the front seat. My husband took my hand hard enough that it hurt. Behind us, Christmas lights glowed in their windows like a lie. I thought walking out would be the end of it, that we'd shut the door, drive away, and escape. But I was wrong. They weren't finished. Not by a long shot, and I had no idea what they had already set in motion, or how far they were willing to go. If my in-laws' Christmas stunt was a hurricane, then the years leading up to it were the slow, ominous wind that everyone pretends isn't a warning. People always assume the worst moment in a story is the beginning. It isn't. The beginning is the part you mistake for normal. I met my husband Samuel when I was 21, the kind of age where you still believe 2 cups of coffee count as hydration and a group project can't actually ruin your life. We were in the same program, both overworked, underslept, and trying our best to look like adults. He had that earnest, slightly nerdy charm that made you think he actually read all the assigned chapters. I had the survival instincts of someone who grew up navigating complicated people. Somehow, we fit. He told me early on, like date 3, that his family was a bit much. That's what he called them. A bit much. I didn't understand what a bit much really meant until much later. Spoiler. Understatement of the century. I was studying in a city far from my own family. I thought when we got married, I'd get the movie version of in-laws. Awkward at first, then warm and supportive, and maybe baking cookies shaped like your initials. Instead, I got Janice and Gerald. The first time I met them, Janice told me I looked different than expected. And Gerald shook my hand with the same enthusiasm you'd offer a man handing out parking tickets. Kimberly, my sister-in-law, looked me up and down like she was evaluating a contestant on a cooking show she didn't like. But Samuel was sweet and supportive, and in love with me. So I pushed through. When Fiona was born, I was hopeful. In-laws soften when there's a baby involved. That's what the movies say. Turns out movies lie. We lived 20 minutes away from them, close enough that Samuel felt obligated to see them weekly, but far enough that I could spend the car ride practicing deep breathing like someone preparing for a court deposition. Samuel believed in family duty. It wasn't love. It was guilt shaped like loyalty. He'd grown up with parents who measured affection in corrections and attention in criticism. He didn't like them, but he felt responsible for them. It was a strange, painful dance. I tried to make it easier. I became the perfect daughter-in-law, polite, helpful, smile on even when it hurt. I brought dishes to holidays. I cleaned their kitchen without being asked. I sat through stories about how Kimberly was the perfect child who never raised her voice, never made mistakes, and never disappointed them. When their elderly mother, Agnes, needed help, I was there. Janice barely visited her. Gerald didn't lift a finger. Kimberly didn't have time, whatever that meant. So I showed up. I brought Fiona. I cleaned Agnes's kitchen. I changed light bulbs she couldn't reach. I listened to her talk about her garden days and her favorite books. She treated Fiona like a treasure, not a burden. Fiona adored her, and for a while, that was enough to balance everything else. Then the spotlight shifted to Madeline, Kimberly's daughter, same age as Fiona. In a sane universe, two little cousins would be treated equally. In ours, Madeline was treated like a minor celebrity, and Fiona was treated like the friend's kid who got dragged along. Gift exchanges? Madeline got dolls with hair longer than Fiona's entire body, plus sparkly outfits, plus accessories. Fiona got socks. Once, she got a coloring book, because she doesn't need fancy things. When Fiona asked why the presents were so different, I told her some adults forget how to be fair. I didn't tell her I wanted to fold those socks into a slingshot and fire them directly at Janice's forehead. Janice and Gerald never missed a chance to compare the girls either. Madeline was advanced. Madeline was refined. Madeline was clearly part of the family. Fiona was quiet, or a bit sensitive. I told myself it was irritating, not harmful. I told myself I could model grace. I told myself Fiona didn't see it. She saw it. Then came the shift, the comments, the whispers that weren't whispers. "She doesn't look much like Samuel," Janice said once, too casually. Gerald added, "Kids pick up traits from everywhere." Everywhere. Right. Kimberly laughed like she was sharing an inside joke with the devil. Samuel heard some of it, enough to make him clench his jaw and mutter under his breath as we drove home. He hated it. He hated them. But the guilt, all that guilt, had wrapped around him like ivy. He'd say things like, "They don't mean it. They're old-fashioned. They don't know how to talk about things." But then the comments got bolder. "Are you sure she's yours, Samuel? You never know these days. We'd feel better if we had proof." Proof. Like Fiona was a crime scene. At first, I brushed it off because family says stupid things, right? Then I saw Fiona's face one day when she overheard Gerald say, "Maybe she has another father." She didn't cry. She just folded inward, quiet, confused, bruised. I felt something cold slide into place inside me. And then it happened. The moment the hints stopped being hints. "We want a DNA test," Gerald said, looking directly at me. I remember thinking, this is the line. This is where we stop pretending. I didn't know it would get worse. I didn't know it was connected to something far bigger. Something with zeros at the end, something hidden in legal documents, something that explained why they'd suddenly gone from petty to vicious. I thought the DNA question was the climax. It wasn't. It was just the start. If you've ever slammed a door behind you so hard it feels like it sealed a chapter of your life shut, that was us after Christmas at my in-laws. Except the chapter wasn't sealed. It was cracking open into an entirely new disaster. We got home and the silence hit first. Not the peaceful kind. The kind where your adrenaline is still in your teeth and your shoulders are stuck halfway between shaking and wanting to punch a wall. Fiona went straight to the couch and curled up under her blanket. My husband stood in the doorway like someone had unplugged him. I leaned against the table and tried to remember how to breathe air that didn't taste like humiliation. Finally, he exhaled. "Hannah," he said, voice low and dangerous. "I'm done." "With them?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "With everything," he said. "The money, the help, the weekly visits, all of it." That snapped my brain out of its freeze mode. For years, Samuel had been sending his parents about $200 a month. Nothing outrageous, but enough that it was clearly more about guilt than assistance. He'd always shrugged and said things like, "It makes them feel supported," or "It's just what you do." Now he walked to the counter, logged into his banking app, and canceled the transfer like he was cutting a rope that had been around his neck since childhood. "There," he said. "Done." I didn't cheer. I didn't scold him. I didn't tell him he didn't have to. Because honestly, he damn well did. Instead, I just said, "Good." We sat together quietly, watching Fiona's chest rise and fall as she drifted into an exhausted sleep. She looked so small, so breakable, so undeserving of the cruelty she'd endured that night. "You know what hurts most?" Samuel whispered. "That they said it in front of her," I said instantly. He nodded, jaw clenching. "And that they meant it." I reached for his hand. He looked at me with the kind of expression that comes only when a man realizes his parents aren't just a bit much. They're toxic. I wish that was the end of the night. But toxic people are like raccoons. The second you think they've given up, they're back on your porch knocking over your trash. Around 9:30 p.m., Samuel's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered and immediately straightened. Yes, this is him. Tomorrow morning? Sure. We'll be there." He hung up. His face was unreadable. "Who was that?" I asked. "A lawyer," he said. "My grandmother's lawyer." That got my heartbeat going again. "Did he say what it's about?" "No, only that it's important and she wants us to come." We both looked at Fiona, still asleep, still holding the stuffed bear Agnes had gifted her, the only truly safe person on that side of the family. My stomach twisted. "Is Agnes okay?" "I think she's fine," he said. "Just angry." Angry? Angry was new. We sat on the couch, whispering in the dim light, both pretending not to imagine the worst. But the truth hung between us. Janice and Gerald had taken their obsession with belonging to a new level. There was a reason that DNA conversation had escalated so quickly. Something had triggered it. Something big. Samuel rubbed his face. "I know why this all started." I turned to him. He swallowed. "A few months ago, my grandmother told me she wanted to leave Fiona something. Not everything. Just a gift. Something small. She said Fiona makes her happy. That she's kind." My breath caught. He went on. "My mother overheard, and she lost it. She told my grandmother it was irresponsible to leave money to a child who might not be blood." The room started spinning, and not in the fun amusement park way. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that this entire DNA obsession started because your mother didn't want Fiona to inherit something?" He nodded. "She told me, before any money goes to that child, we need proof." That child. That child. My hands curled into fists. I didn't even feel my nails digging into my palms. "So now they're trying to discredit her," I whispered. "To make sure she gets nothing." He nodded again. "And to make sure Madeline gets everything." Of course. Of course Kimberly and her daughter were involved in this circus. I stood up, pacing. "So tomorrow, we meet the lawyer." "Yeah," he said. "I think she's making changes." I didn't know what that meant, but a cold, electric feeling went through me. Agnes was a sweet old woman who baked cookies and told stories about her youth. But she wasn't stupid. If she heard what happened tonight, she wouldn't let it go. The next morning, we dressed Fiona for school in silence. She was quieter than usual, clinging to me like she was trying to anchor herself. "Mom?" she whispered as I tied her shoes. "Did Grandma say that because I don't look like Daddy?" My throat tightened. "No, baby," I said. "She said it because she's wrong." She nodded slowly, but I saw it. The seed of doubt planted by people who should have protected her. We dropped her off, then drove to the law office. My hands were cold the whole ride. When we entered the meeting room, Agnes was already there, sitting straighter than I'd ever seen her, eyes bright, lips pressed tight like a woman on a mission. The lawyer introduced himself. Then he said the words that made my head spin. "Agnes asked me to update her estate planning." Samuel blinked. "Because of last night?" Agnes nodded sharply. "I won't tolerate what they said to that child. Not one bit." She went on, her voice soft but firm. "They questioned her place in this family. They hurt her, and I won't allow people like that to inherit my life's work." I stared at her. What are you saying?" The lawyer slid a folder across the table. "Agnes has approximately $3 million in assets," he said. "She has chosen to divide that into 2 living trusts." My breath hitched. "One trust names Samuel as beneficiary," he said. "The other names Fiona." I felt dizzy. "And," he added, "the house your in-laws currently live in legally belongs to Agnes. She has decided to place that property into the trusts as well." Samuel's jaw dropped. "Oh, wow." "Yes," Agnes said, eyes blazing. "They will not be inheriting a single penny." I sat there, stunned, unable to speak. Agnes reached for my hand. "You and that little girl have been the only ones who visit me, who help me, who show kindness. I'm giving my life savings to the people who deserve it." I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My heart hammered like it was trying to break out of my chest. We drove home in stunned silence, each of us trying to process what had just happened. We had barely stepped through our front door when my phone lit up like a fire alarm. A call from Janice, then Gerald, then Kimberly, all back to back. Samuel picked up, and the screaming started. It wasn't just anger, it was panic. Real panic. Money-driven, house-losing panic. They had no idea this was only the beginning. After a family blows up, there's always a stretch of time where everything feels unstable, like you're waiting for whatever comes next. For us, it lasted 3 days. 3 days of Janice and Gerald calling nonstop, alternating between wailing, screaming, guilt-tripping, and the ever-classic, "We were misunderstood." 3 days of Samuel looking at his phone like it was contaminated with radioactive stupidity before blocking another number. 3 days of Kimberly texting him paragraphs that read like rejected pages from a soap opera script. 3 days of Fiona growing quieter every time she overheard a voicemail notification. By the 3rd night, I was done. Not angry done, calm done. The kind of done where your soul goes still. I sat at the kitchen table watching Samuel mash his forehead into his palms like he was trying to iron out his brain. "Sam," I said, "I'm doing the DNA test." His head jerked up. "Hannah, no, you don't have to prove anything." I know. I really did. I had 0 doubt, because I was there. Obviously. "But I need this off the table," I said. "Forever. And I want the results in writing so we can shove them into every one of their accusations' faces." He sighed, defeated. "Okay. If it helps you feel in control, do it." Control. Funny word. I'd been without it for years when it came to his family. So once the samples were collected, I sealed the kit myself and dropped it in the mailbox the next morning like I was sending off a tiny grenade. And then things took another turn. I went to pick up Fiona from school. She wasn't there. Not with her teacher. Not on the playground. Not inside the building. The secretary looked up from her desk with a tight smile. "Oh, your in-laws picked her up today." My stomach turned to ice. "My what?" "Your husband's parents," she said cheerfully. "They're still listed on the authorized pickup list." I'd forgotten about that list. The one we filled out when Fiona started school, back when the worst thing Janice had ever said was that my casserole was a bit unconventional. I called Samuel. No hello, no small talk. "They took her." "What?" His voice cracked with a kind of rage I'd rarely heard. "Your parents picked her up. I'm going there. I'm coming now." I didn't wait. I drove. Their front doors swung open like they'd been waiting for me. "Hannah!" Janice said, smiling with her entire face for the first time in probably 6 years. "Come in. You're going to love what we've done." I walked inside. It looked like the toy aisle at Target had exploded. Brand new dolls, a scooter, 2 bags from a high-end kids' boutique, even a small indoor trampoline set up in their living room. And there was Fiona, sitting on the couch, nervous, small, holding a giant stuffed unicorn like a shield. "Mom," she said softly, "they kept giving me things." I looked at Gerald. "We just want to make sure our granddaughter is happy," he said with a wide, fake proud smile. "We love her so much." My dry humor activated like a defense mechanism. "Oh? That's new," Janice tutted. "Don't be dramatic, Hannah. We've always loved her. We're just showing it more." Right. Showing it more. Because people always show love right after they've been cut out of a $3 million inheritance. Then Janice crouched in front of Fiona and cupped her chin. "You'll tell your great-grandmother how much you love these gifts, right? She needs to know who really cares about you." My vision actually blurred. For a second, I wasn't sure if I was going to faint or commit a felony. Luckily, Samuel arrived before either could happen. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped the second he stepped inside. Gerald straightened. "We're bonding with our granddaughter. You abducted her from school." "We picked her up," Janice corrected, "because you two have been unreasonable." I said nothing. I was past words, past anger. My fury had evolved into something cold and diamond hard. "Fiona," I said, "go get your backpack. We're leaving." She didn't hesitate. Janice's face twisted. "You are not leaving without taking her gifts. They're for her." "We don't want them," Samuel said. "You don't know what she wants," Gerald yelled. Fiona stepped behind my leg. "I want to go home." That was it. The moment the spell broke. We walked out. Janice shrieked behind us, "This isn't over!" Which, historically, is what people say right before it very much is. On the drive home, Fiona was quiet. Then she said something that made my heart fold in on itself. "Mom, why do they only love me when they want something?" 8 years old. 8. No child should ever have to form that sentence. I held her hand. "They don't know what love is, baby. But we do." She nodded slowly, but her eyes were full of storm clouds. That night, Samuel and I drafted a cease and desist letter with help from a lawyer friend. We removed Janice and Gerald from school contact lists, blocked every number, closed the door, hard. Then we told Agnes. She went silent, then furious, then determined. "I'm done," she said. "They won't get the chance to manipulate me or that child again." The next morning, she met with her lawyer. By afternoon, everything was finalized. Her trust, once revocable, became irrevocable. The house, the savings, every asset she owned, half to Samuel, half to Fiona. No loopholes, no changes. No chances for Janice or Gerald to claw their way back in. When the paperwork was done, Agnes called me herself. "You're my family," she said. "They're not." I cried after I hung up. Hard. Not because of the money, but because someone had finally chosen us. 2 days later, the DNA results arrived. A match as clear as daylight. Samuel's daughter. Exactly what we expected. We printed the report, attached it to the cease and desist, and sent copies to Janice and Gerald. A few hours later, my husband's phone rang. Blocked number. He didn't answer. A voicemail came through anyway. It was Janice, sobbing, begging, desperate. Exactly the sound people make when everything they tried to destroy turns out to be indestructible. I didn't shout. I just listened. And finally, I felt free. It's been 3 months, and the fallout has been spectacular. Janice and Gerald moved out of their house the same week the trust paperwork became official. Seeing the moving truck in their driveway felt like watching a chapter close itself. They tried one last guilt-filled voicemail, but we didn't respond. We were already done. Fiona sleeps better now. Samuel smiles more. And Agnes? She's thriving with the peace she should have had years ago. So what do you think? Did Agnes do the right thing disinheriting her own daughter, or did she go too far? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.